Good morning, RVCC Online. So glad that you have joined us here this Sunday morning. My name is Crystal. I'm the digital ministry pastor here, as well as our groups and connections coordinator at our Parkland campus. And so I wanted to get on here really fast before we have a very special guest that I'm super excited about, and just talk to you a little bit about what the future holds here for our online service. This is officially the last time that I am getting in front of this camera, at least for now, to really pre-record something for our online service. Over the last 5 years, like we talked about last week, we have done a lot of work for our online service, and it has been fantastic and so worth it to build the community that we have here. And even though some things are changing, I just want to give you a quick snapshot of some of the ways that you can still continue to remain engaged and still watch the message here at Rainier View, specifically here at RVCC Online. So first and foremost, we are changing up how we are developing our content here at Rainier View. And that's because for the last 5 years, I've pretty much been mostly a one-person show, if not maybe a volunteer here and there. But it has been a lot of, like I said, just a great amount of work, but also a lot of work to put in for the online service. So we have been able to develop a system that we're able to now record our services that are happening on Sunday morning, both at Parkland and at Graham. And this is kind of exciting because this is one step closer to be able to show people who are coming to our online service, who are coming to our website, what's actually happening inside of our services here at Rainier View. It's basically kind of that come and see story that Erica was talking a little bit about a couple of weeks ago. And we're really excited about that. So that'll be one way to be able to watch. We're going to be pre-recording that, and then we're going to be actually putting that on our website, and that's going to be available on Mondays for you to watch as well. And then, of course, after a lot of thinking and trying to just kind of wrestle with what is the best option to make sure that you all stay engaged here at Rainier View, is also, I don't want to take away necessarily the online service time. I think that you probably have established a really good rhythm by being here every single Sunday at 10:30, and I don't want to take that away and that opportunity away from you. So with that, it's going to look a little different. We are going to go dark next week to where we won't have a service next week. And that'll be the first time we've ever not had a service here online officially, or at least something playing. And we're going to go ahead and actually just start having our services the following week after that. And what I want to do is I want to take those services that we are recording in person on Sundays and have those playing at 10:30 on Sunday mornings right here. And they'll be a week behind from what you would see in person, but it's still going to help keep that rhythm going of being here on Sunday and staying engaged in the message. There won't be a worship song, there won't be announcements, and that's strictly for copyright purposes, but we will have the message package just ready to go, so that way if you want to, you can still sit down at 10:30 with your cup of coffee, your tea, your breakfast, whatever it is, and be at your computer or your television set and watching the message. Now, hosting is also going to be something that'll be difficult because we don't have a volunteer team for that at the current time. But I want to make sure that you still are able to get pastoral care. So if you need to reach out, and some of you do this on a regular basis, so you're already in that rhythm, please reach out to me at crystalc@rainierview.org. I would love to schedule a time to meet with you in person, a phone call, a Zoom call, whatever it takes. And then, like I said, hopefully down the future here, if there's interest, I would love to have a home group, essentially, where we meet once a month on Zoom and we're able to talk and discuss and share things that maybe we've been learning about throughout the series that's happening here at Rainier View. And again, I don't want you to feel like you're disconnected. So again, email me, reach out to me at any time. I would love to continue in the conversations that most of us still already have going. So the message is still going to be available for you. It's going to be available on our YouTube channel. It's going to be available on our website. It'll be kind of cool. You can either watch the Graham or the Parkland location. We'll do the services here online and have the messages playing at 10:30. I'll switch back and forth between Graham and Parkland, so that way you can get a taste of each one of those campuses week by week and all of that good stuff. And again, I am still here and available for pastoral care. And like I said, we have a very special guest here today. So most of you know Mike. Mike actually started this whole thing as our online campus pastor here at Rainier View. He now works for a wonderful organization that is one of our local partners called Coffee Oasis. And if you were here in person today, you would see that we're having a whole Coffee Oasis takeover in our foyer. We're having a representative from our location of Coffee Oasis that's local to us to be able to talk a little bit more about how we as a church can be engaging and helpful in Coffee Oasis's mission. So yeah, throughout the Everyone series, we've been learning what it means to live out our faith in everyday life, to notice and love people around us that we might not usually pay attention to, and to love like Jesus does. And so, like I said, we've got Mike here this morning, and we're going to be continuing just a little bit, I don't want to say in our Everyone series, but this feels like a good round out. And so, Mike, I'm just really excited to have you back. And this is kind of like, I even said, people know that this is technically our last time recording.
Yep.
And this feels really poetic to have you as the last like pre-recording, since you were like the first pre-recording in 2020.
Yes, we've learned a few things in the 5 years. But yeah, here we are.
It's so crazy. So yeah, so for those of you who may have not met Mike yet, I just wanted to ask Mike a few interview type questions for Coffee Oasis, since we're doing the takeover today. So yeah, tell our those watching out there a little bit about yourself, Mike, and yeah, your connection to the Coffee Oasis.
Yeah, so I've been part of Rainier View for about 10 years now. Started as the campus pastor when we moved up here, and so I was the Parkland campus pastor for several years. That's how I first actually got introduced to the Coffee Oasis. You know, we were serving their coffee, and they were one of our kind of local ministry partners. And the more and more that I learned about the organization, the more and more I just appreciated their heart and their ministry and what they were doing. And so when later on I was looking for kind of a transition in something new, when I heard about the positions that they had opened up, I jumped at it and was so excited to jump in with them.
That's so awesome. And so what is the Coffee Oasis for those that might know, and helping youth in Pierce County?
Yeah, so the Coffee Oasis, so we operate one of 2 shelters for homeless teenagers here in Pierce County. We had the only one for a long time, and there's another one that just recently opened up, but there's still a massive need. But that's one of the main things that we do is we've got a homeless shelter for 13 to 17-year-olds here in Pierce County. We also run a drop-in center that's open Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, that's for 13 to 25-year-olds, and that's a place where they can get the resources they need. They can get mentoring, they can get help for kind of whatever next steps, job training, all that kind of stuff. But again, just trying to provide a place where they can feel safe, where they feel like they belong, and ultimately are encouraged to take next steps in life.
Yeah, no, that's so good. So usually, like, you might be hearing, you hear the term Coffee Oasis, and some people think, okay, well, this must be like just a coffee shop. And it technically is, actually, but it's so much more than that. So how does something as simple as coffee help open up doors for ministry?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny, like, people hear the Coffee Oasis and they just think about coffee, but really, I mean, it's one of the biggest things that we can do, because it's an easy place for people to gather. I mean, coffee shops are just natural places to gather, to have community, to sit down and have conversations. And so I love getting people into our coffee shop because, number one, we serve great coffee. I mean, it's really, really good. But once they're in there and they can kind of see what we're doing, you can kind of see the light bulb come on over the head of like, oh, I understand it better now, because I mean, we're in one building, and the top floor is the shelter and the bottom floor is the coffee shop and the drop-in center, and so they can actually see what else is happening. And yeah, it kind of allows them a little bit more of a insight in terms of what we do and the youth that we're speaking to the lives of.
That's so awesome. And I can attest that the coffee is really good, because we have it every single Sunday here at Rainier View. So if you want to come in person, you can grab some coffee or head down to one of the coffee shops there at Coffee Oasis. So you serve as the Pierce County Community Development Officer. I think I got that correct.
It's a really long title.
Long title.
Really
That's
long.
Okay. Mine's super long now too, so I get it. So what does that look like on a weekly basis for you, and what keeps you passionate about this work with Coffee Oasis?
That's a great question. Yeah. So my main role is how do I help more and more people partner with the Coffee Oasis. And so I'm always meeting with new churches and civic groups like Rotary or Kiwanis groups, meeting with businesses, trying to form those partnerships to help us to be able to do what we do. You know, as a very small nonprofit, we can't operate without the financial support of all sorts of different organizations, raising support among individuals. But my job mainly is how do we get more and more groups plugged in with what we're doing so they can do donation drives or they can sponsor our huge fundraiser that we do every year, but mainly getting more and more partnerships. And so that's actually what really gets me encouraged, is to see how many new organizations all the time are joining with us. Because I always tell people it takes the entire community to make a difference for this community. And so to be able to see more and more businesses and churches like Rainier View and civic groups partner with us to really be part of the solution is super encouraging. And I love that.
That's so good. I love that full circle aspect of things, because it's like here at Rainier View, clearly we can't do it all. We would love to, but we're not fully equipped. But to be able to support local partners and organizations like Coffee Oasis that's actually able to do these things and are equipped and continue to support is so valuable and so important. So that brings me to one of the other questions that I had. Rainier View's vision is to see every neighborhood in Pierce County engaged by believers and transformed by Jesus. That is our vision. And so I was reading through your sermon notes, and I don't want to get too ahead of your sermon that you're about to give us here. But I did love how you said, you raised the question of what about the people who don't have a neighborhood? So we've done this whole Everyone series talking about loving our neighbor well and reaching out to our neighbor. But yeah, what about the people that don't have a neighborhood? Why is it so important for the church to remember those who often go unseen?
The easy answer is because that's what Jesus did. I mean, ultimately, that was his ministry, is that wherever he went, those were his neighbors. And so it's for us, I mean, granted, there are people that are our neighbors that we see all the time, but we always have to be open and looking for who God puts in our path right then and right there, because that's our neighbor at that moment. And so, again, how do we be more like Jesus? Well, the people that we encounter, we need to view them with the eyes of Christ.
Yeah, so good. So good. So finally, so for people who are hopefully maybe moved by this message today that you're about to deliver to us, and a little bit of sharing here, what are some tangible ways that they can actually come alongside Coffee Oasis, whether it's by, I mean, I'm sure it's all of the above, prayer, volunteering, all of those things, but what are some tangible ways that we can be supporting you guys as a local partner?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, prayer is a huge thing. Buying our coffee always helps. Every dollar that goes into our coffee shop, all the proceeds go back into our youth program. So getting people to buy our coffee, subscribe to our coffee plan, being able to support us different ways, whether it's bringing food or clothing. We always have drives trying to get things like that, and then being able to support us financially. I mean, I'll talk about it in the message, but even $5 a month, that's 1 hour of safety and shelter for a youth who otherwise would be on the streets. An hour is huge in the life of a youth, and so everybody can do $5. So that's possible. And then becoming an advocate and being able to tell people about what we are doing and letting people know kind of the issue of youth homelessness right here in Pierce County, and raising awareness is massive.
That's so huge. I had no idea that you could actually have a coffee so you could do that at home too? You can have a personal coffee home? That's good to know. See, I'm learning something new here with Mike as well. I had no idea. So now I know where to potentially be getting my coffee here in the future.
Free shipping. So
free shipping. Okay, I will take it. So, okay, well, Mike, thank you for being here today. Thank you for coming on behalf of the team of Coffee Oasis. Thanks for delivering the message here today, being with us, and just sharing a little bit more about your heart and about Coffee Oasis and why it's so important for us to be supporting you here as a church family and beyond as well. So, all right, here's Mike with the message.
RVCC Online, how are we today? So happy to be here with you as we're coming out of the Everyone series. And during the course of that series, we were talking about what does it really mean to live like a disciple of Jesus, not just with our words, but in our actions. And during the course of the series, we were encouraged several times to kind of come up with that list of people that are in our lives who we really want to see come into a relationship with Christ. And so we were encouraged to either write down or at least mentally come up with that list of people who are in our neighborhoods, people who are on the teams that we're playing on, people who are in the classes where we are, people that are in our extended families, people that we really want to see come into that relationship with Jesus. But what about the people that you don't see on a regular basis, the people that are just kind of largely unseen in our community. You know, as a church, our vision is to reach every neighborhood in Pierce County and to see every neighborhood engaged by believers. But what about the people who don't have a neighborhood in our community? What about the people who honestly don't know where they're even going to be sleeping tonight? How do we reach those people if we don't see them on a regular basis? Well, my name is Mike Parejo. I'm the Pierce County Community Development Officer for the Coffee Oasis. We are a gospel-centered nonprofit that was started up in Bremerton back in '97. We've been in here in Tacoma since about 2019, and I got a stat for you that you may not believe. And I don't know if you know this, but in the entire state of Washington, there are 100 total shelter beds for youth under the age of 18. In the entire state, there's 100 beds in shelters just for youth. Do you have any idea how many homeless teenagers there are in Pierce County alone? On a nightly basis, a rough estimate is roughly 400. So if you do the math, that means in the entire state of Washington, there's only enough beds to support 1/4 of the need just in Pierce County alone. So it is a massive need. And so as the Coffee Oasis, we are really desiring to reach and meet that need here. You know, how do we reach the at-risk and the homeless population for teenagers right here in our community? Youth that don't have an address, youth that don't have a home to go to, or they've got a home, but home is not safe. And so going back there is not a good choice for them. And we want to reach them with the love of Jesus. You know, the same Jesus who was intentional about loving people on the fringes of society, who was intentional about loving the outcast, people who were rejected, people who were ostracized. And so like Jesus, we want to bring hope and healing to those who need it the most. And so this morning, we're going to look at a passage of scripture that's found in John chapter 5. And so if you've got that, you can flip that over to your Bible or get there in your Bible app. But we're going to be looking at a passage where Jesus is trying to reach out to the one of those who were on the outskirts of society. And this particular gospel account of Jesus' life was written by one of his disciples, John, who along with his brother James and Peter were kind of part of Jesus' inner circle, and so they got to experience some things with Jesus that others didn't. And I find it interesting because John is the only one of the 4 gospel authors who record the miracle that we are about to read. And so with that in mind, we're going to read how Jesus brought hope to the one in a very unique situation. So we're going to be in John chapter 5, starting in verse 1. Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed, and one who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." Then Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat and walk." At once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. So a lot's going on in those 9 verses right there. But one of the first things that I want us to kind of realize is that John mentions that Jesus is in Jerusalem at this point in time during when one of the 3 major religious festivals is happening in Jerusalem. And these were times where it was expected of all Jewish men to kind of make the pilgrimage to Jerusalem to be there for these 3 major religious festivals. But that's not why Jesus was there. Jesus didn't show up to Jerusalem to check off like a religious box saying like, okay, like I did what I should do like a good Jewish boy. That's not why he was there. In fact, he wasn't even in the city for this passage. He went to a place outside the city where those who were inside were choosing not to go. And it was this pool that was called Bethesda. Now, the pool was actually 2 adjoining pools, and we're going to have a picture of this that I kind of just pulled off of good old Google here. But in this picture, we see 2 adjoining pools, and they're kind of each have their retaining walls, and they've got these steps that kind of lead down to them. And so these pools were kind of built in this valley or kind of this natural depression outside of the city walls. And so it was a place where it was kind of a natural place where they could gather water. And so that's where people could kind of, descend down these stone steps to either, get into the water or to be able to immerse themselves. Now, a few years ago, my wife April and I had the opportunity to go to Jerusalem. We went there for our 25th wedding anniversary, and we got to see all sorts of sites that I'd only read about in the Bible. We got to go to the Sea of Galilee. We were on a boat in the Sea of Galilee. We got to go to the Jordan River where Jesus was baptized. We got to be in the Garden of Gethsemane, kind of on that Mount of Olives, the night when Jesus was arrested, where he was hanging out with Peter and James and John and praying. We got to be on that mountainside. And one of the other places that we got to visit was this pool called Bethesda, okay? And so I took some pictures as any good vacationer will do, and so I just want to show you a picture of Bethesda as we see it, or as we saw it in 2022, and as we kind of see that there's this upper level, and then you can see where it would descend down and kind of that arch down there in terms of where the pool was going to be. Now, in the passage, we see that this pool that Jesus visits is called Bethesda, and Bethesda translates to house of mercy. But what we kind of see in this passage is that this house of mercy is more like a pit of despair, for people who are just in the greatest need in society. And so John describes the people there as those who were of the greatest need, people that didn't really have the ability to help themselves, people who were blind and lame and paralyzed. And yet, despite all of this, these were the kind of people that society really looked down upon. Because you have to understand that in the first century, the crippled, the blind, the lame, they were not looked at with compassion. And they were not viewed as people who were, quote unquote, less fortunate than us. It wasn't like that. This was a culture that was based on the assumptions of Deuteronomy 28. And as kind of you go to the Old Testament and you read through Deuteronomy, what the people believed is that, if you had a good life, if things were going well for you, if you were righteous, then you would be blessed. And if you were unrighteous, if you were disobeying God, you would be cursed. And so these people who were crippled and blind and lame, they must have done terrible things to end up in this condition. They must be just terrible, terrible sinners. Now, of course, this is an incorrect interpretation of Scripture, okay? Like, you can look throughout the Old Testament, you can see people who suffered serious affliction that were not terrible sinners. Just look at the book of Job, where Job is described as this man who was, he was righteous, he was blameless, he was upright, he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, and yet he suffered in ways that nobody else did, including physically suffering in massive ways that even his friends thought, well, you must have sinned in some way. So they just didn't get it. And so we've got this city of Jerusalem that's filled with the righteous people who had come there for this religious festival. And where does Jesus go? He goes to the place where the quote-unquote sinners are, which is super on brand for Jesus. And so he goes down there and he visits this place where there's this vast number of hurting and broken people. And out of all these people, he turns his attention to one man, just one guy, a man who was disabled and was really unable to help himself for a span of about 38 years. Now, we don't know if he was born this way or if he became that way later in life, but that doesn't really matter. What matters is 38 years is a really, really long time to live the way that he was living disabled. Now, the question that kind of popped in my mind, especially after being there, and you kind of saw in the picture earlier, again, it's the descent to kind of go down to the pool of Bethesda. And the question that I was asking myself was, why would this guy and so many other people who were disabled, why would they make this difficult descent down to the pool during this religious festival? Why would they be there instead of being inside the city walls? Because again, the city was going to be filled with all sorts of religious people who were doing the right things. That's probably the time of year where they were most likely to get help from other people in terms of having people give them alms or when they could beg. That's when maybe they would be able to get the most. Why were they not there? Why were they in the pool rather than being in the city? And it's because I think the people that were at Bethesda, they were looking for healing and not a handout. And we make a lot of assumptions about why people end up the way that they are, but I can tell you the vast majority of them, that they want to be healed. They don't just want a handout. Now, it's interesting, there's a portion of this scripture that has been removed, okay? So maybe you've got an older version of the Bible where you're like, there's actually another verse and a half that you didn't read there. Those verses have been pulled out of the Bible because in a lot of the early manuscripts, these verses weren't included. But I want to read them anyway because I think it gives us a little bit of a better picture of why. Why were these people down there? And so I'm going to read kind of the first part of verse 3, and then we'll jump into kind of the second half, and then verse 4, which are not actually included in translations of the Bible Bible anymore. But let's jump into it because it'll kind of give us an idea of why so many disabled people were gathered at Bethesda. The passage reads, "Here a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, and the paralyzed. And they waited for the moving of the waters. From time to time, an angel of the Lord would come down and stir up the waters. And the first one into the pool, after each such disturbance, would be cured of whatever disease that they had." Okay, so now we get a better understanding. And even though those aren't included anymore, we can kind of see it being referred to again later on in the passage when the man that Jesus is talking to, he talks about like when the waters are stirred. So again, it gives us that kind of contextual clue that what we just read may have been something that was happening on a regular basis. And so this man who's been at the pool and so many others are there because they believe that there was a chance for them to have more. There was a chance for me to see again. There's a chance for me to walk again. There's a chance for me to feel whole again. And that's why they're there. If they could get into the water at the exact right moment, maybe they could experience healing. Maybe they could experience the wholeness that they'd always longed for. Or at least one point in time, they believed that. At this point in time, I'm not quite sure that the invalid that Jesus talks to really believes that anymore. And I think maybe he's lost hope just based on kind of his interaction with Jesus, because Jesus asks him, like, Jesus sees him first of all, and the man says that the man is lying there. Okay, that he's just lying there. It's not like, hey, can you help? Like, can you come over here? When the waters are stirred, I need your help. There's nothing like that. He's just lying there. And so Jesus is the one who initiates the conversation. He says, do you even want to get well? And the man's response is very telling in terms of what he believes anymore. Because he doesn't respond like, "Oh, yes, sir, please help. I want to be well." His response is more of an excuse. He's like, nobody helps me. Like, the waters get stirred and I'm never going to be first. Like, look at me. Like, I can't get myself down there and nobody helps me. So he won't even answer the question. He just makes this excuse of why he's not healed at this point, when he's not really answering the question that Jesus is asking. He felt invisible to the world around him. But we need to remember that no one is invisible to Jesus. And so he approaches this man and he asks him this very simple question. And the man doesn't understand. The man doesn't have this understanding that it's not the pool that will heal him. It's this man who's standing in front of him. Jesus, the hope of the world, is the one who can bring healing. And so when he makes this excuse, Jesus isn't having it. And he says, look, get up, pick up your mat and walk. 8 words. 8 words, and something happens in this guy's heart. And I don't really know exactly what happens, but again, Jesus just says a few words and he decides like, okay, I'm going to stand up. And it wasn't, he comes to this realization that it wasn't kind of the stirring of the waters that was going to heal him. It's when Jesus kind of created this stirring in his heart that he decided he was going to get up and he was going to take some steps. And after 38 years of being an invalid, his entire life is changed. And I love this because Jesus models this compassion that goes out and moves, a compassion that is accompanied by action. Jesus didn't sit there and just talk to his disciples about all the injustice in the world and being overwhelmed about how terrible things are. He went out and did something, even if it was just for the one. And I think sometimes we can get so wrapped up in like there's so much injustice and there's so many terrible things happening and I'm just one person, what difference can I make? Do what Jesus did and reach into the life of the one, to bring hope and healing to the one who may need it most in that moment in time. As followers of Christ, we are called to do the same as he did, to step towards those who our world easily steps past. And again, before we get super overwhelmed by the massive amount of need, and that number of like 400 homeless teenagers every single night, like that's way too many. Like, we've got a shelter that's got 12 beds. That's not enough. Well, we can get overwhelmed by the fact, or we can do what we can for the ones that we can help. Out of all the people that were at that pool at Bethesda that day, Jesus reached out to one. We don't read in Scripture that he walked from person to person to person and helped everybody. Now, maybe he did, but it's not recorded there. He helped the one. And I think God knows how much of a difference it can make, even if we go out and just help the one. Now, normally in a message like this, I would take the opportunity to talk about one of our youth, one of the youth who's in our shelter right now, one of the youth who is attending our drop-in center and is receiving services and help. But I actually want to talk about a different encounter that I had in the last couple weeks after our huge Coffee and Corks fundraiser. This is something that I organize every single year, and we had over 400 guests registered. We had like 50 volunteers. Several of you, thank you so much for coming out and volunteering. But it was an evening where we raised over $261,000 to support our youth shelter. And part of the evening, there's this silent auction. We've got like 50 silent auction items, and it's inevitable that several of the items get left behind for a number of reasons. And I did something different this year that I never do, and I thought I'm going to hand deliver these things back to the people that were the winning bidders, mainly because one of them was a huge like Met Market basket filled with fruit, and I was like, this is going to go bad. I just need to get this to them today. And so I was out delivering these winning auction baskets, and I ran into one of the guys who was a winner, and I just wanted to thank him for his support. And he just kind of took about 20 minutes and he wanted to share with me why he supported the Coffee Oasis. Like, I didn't even ask him. I should have asked him, but I didn't. And he just wanted to offer like, this is why I'm helping. And he shared the story with me that approximately 30 years earlier, he had been a homeless teenager living on the streets. He grew up in a house where both parents were alcoholics. There was a lot of physical and emotional abuse in the house, and he reached the point where it was better for him to go live in his car and to live on the streets than it was to stay in a house that was so incredibly abusive. And one day, I don't know how it happened, but he came into contact with these Catholic priests. They owned this 3-story home. It was, the church owned it, and they said, they kind of understood his plight, and they said, hey, we'll let you stay on the 3rd floor. You can have the whole 3rd floor to yourself. Just help us take care of the home, and that'll be great. And he jumped at the opportunity, and he stayed there through high school until he graduated, after which he joined the military, and after his stint in the military, he entered the workforce. And today, this guy is in upper management of an extremely successful and profitable business right here in Pierce County. And so for him, being able to attend a fundraiser that supports a house not totally similar, but there's some similarities to what he was able to experience. If he could help somebody the way that he was helped 30 years prior, he was going to do that. And I love that. I love how he was willing to give of himself because he understood what it was like. Those are the type of youth that we want to invest in, the youth that hopefully someday they'll be willing to turn around and help those who've gone through similar struggles. Again, I mentioned earlier the Coffee Oasis, again, we want to reach those that are hopeless, those that are hurting, those that are without kind of the stability of a home. They don't have the safety, they don't have the community, they don't have the hope that a lot of us experience on a nightly basis. Again, for Jesus, his ministry always focused on the marginalized, the poor and the blind and the leper and the outcast, the forgotten. And again, the Coffee Oasis, we want to be the house of mercy, a place where people can come, a place where people will see them, even if they have felt invisible prior to. And while we're going to provide for tangible needs like shelter and food and clothing, ultimately we want to be a place where people can experience that love and hope that Jesus brought. Jesus, the hope of the world. And again, as a church, we want to embrace our vision to see every neighborhood in Pierce County engaged by believers and transformed by Jesus. But what does that look like for us? How do we go out into our world? How do we go out and embody that? How do we go out to the places where there are people that are living on the streets, that are living out in the woods, they're living in their cars, they're living, they're couch surfing from place to place. How do we make a difference in their lives? How do we reach the one in that situation? And so I just want to give you a couple quick tangible ways that you can do that before we close our time here. First and foremost, the most important way is through prayer. And ultimately, I would say begin with prayer in terms of how God changes your heart. God, give me your heart for these people. God, how can you change me and change my desires so that I can view these people the way that Christ did? God, work through me. Help me to be like Jesus was to the one, to extend that hope to someone else. And we begin with prayer, but we certainly don't end there. Okay, we need to do more than pray. And prayer is, the most important thing that we do, but it can't be the only thing. Other ways that you can help the Coffee Oasis and kind of the ministry that we're doing is through volunteering, and that can be through volunteering your time at our drop-in center. Even an hour a week can bring some stability to a youth that is used to adults just bailing on them all the time. And so being there and being a consistent person in their life, even if it's just a couple of hours a month, can be huge. Or it can be volunteering your talents. Okay, we've got a lot of people at the church who are giving, whether it's doing maintenance projects or helping on like the celebration committee. We celebrate youth's birthdays. We had one of our members here that for our silent auction, he used his skills and he created this handcrafted charcuterie board and Lazy Susan. They were absolutely beautiful, but they were part of a package that went for over $400 at the silent auction. $400 will take care of a youth for 7 nights in our shelter. That's massive right there, and it is because he used his talents to be able to produce something that would be of help. So you can give of your talents, you can also give financially. And this is something you're like rolling your eyes like, oh great, here's the ask. Yeah, we're gonna make the ask because we need monthly donors. We need monthly donors to make sure that our shelter stays open, that our drop-in center has the resources. And even again, $5 a month is an hour of safety and shelter for a youth. And then even an hour can make a huge difference. Because for these youth, a night on the streets is an opportunity for them to be abused, an opportunity for them to be pulled into sex trafficking. Like there's all sorts of horrific things that happen when you're living on the streets. And so being able to provide for the Coffee Oasis so that we can continue this ministry of bringing student youth in, it's massive. I think about our Joy Givers community here, and man, for the past couple of years, they've been incredible. And they've provided meals, they've provided snack food for our drop-in center. They recently, this month, they took an offering amongst themselves for our family Christmas project to provide Christmas gifts for the youth in December. They raised $1,150. Just amongst themselves. I mean, that's huge. These are people that are on fixed incomes, and to be able to do that, that's huge because they have a heart for these youth that they may never see. Finally, you can become an advocate. Now, we talked about it before, but again, go to our coffee shop. It's great. We serve great coffee. Be in our coffee shop, but more importantly, invite people to have coffee with you at our coffee shop so that they can see what's going on. Again, our coffee shop is on the same floor as our drop-in center. Upstairs is the shelter, and so bring people to the coffee shop and let them see what's going on. Tell them about what is happening here in Pierce County. Help people understand that so that they know that there are 400 youth every single night that are homeless right here in our community and that we can do something about it. I've got an incredible volunteer, Linda, that she's always talking about the Coffee Oasis. She's always inviting people to be a part of it. She's got an email list of over 100 people that she sends out regular emails about what is happening at the Coffee Oasis and the difference that it's making. She's an incredible advocate, and I need more people like her. We need more people like her letting the community know about what is happening here and how they can be a part of it. So friends, let's consider how we can reflect the love and compassion that Jesus showed to the one at Bethesda. Let's be like Jesus and step towards those who are hurting and bring some kind of healing into their life. Let's be a church that goes to the places that Jesus went. Let's go down into the places where people are in pain, into the spaces that are forgotten by our world, so that we can bring the love and the grace and the hope that only Jesus can bring. Thanks so much, and be blessed as you continue into bringing his hope into the world.